Well, welcome to Three-Man Coverage, fellas, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Fred, this is Gino, and Yan, who's actually joining us online. I don't think we're actually the first NFL podcast, but I think we're one of very few in Australia. So this is very exciting for us. So we'll be talking about NFL fantasy. We're also talking some NFL news as well as we go through the weeks, and the start of the season is right upon us. So we're going to kick it off. How's things?
Good.
Good?
Fantasy drafts are well and truly underway, if not completed. But we are going to talk about some draft strategies from different positions. Mainly, we'll go a little bit more exciting. We'll go from, say, pick 2 instead of 1. So 2, 5, and a pick 10. So I'll be at 2. I think Freddie's going to be at 5, and Yen will be at pick 10. And we'll just go through the first 3 rounds of who we would pick and why.
Yeah, so we're pretty much there the NFL season, so you may have already drafted one of your teams, or maybe even a few of your teams, which a couple of my co-hosts are in a number of leagues already. So we'll just talk through just general draft strategies at these picks, where you think you would go with that pick. If not, you may change it up, and it might actually change the game for the rest of the round. So, Gino, if you want to tell us about your first pick at pick 2.
Yeah, so pick 2 for me is really a no-brainer. Essentially, it would have just been who pick 1 took. If McCaffrey didn't go, I would 100% have taken McCaffrey at 2. It's a no-brainer, regardless of the injury that he apparently has, the calf strain. He's going to be more than ready to go when the season kicks off for the 49ers Monday, our time, next week. Last year, even if he did miss a week, I think he was still about 100 points clear of RB2. So for me, it's just money in the bank. Don't overcomplicate it. Take McCaffrey if he's there at 2. But if McCaffrey went at 1, my number 1 wide receiver off the board would have been Tyreek Hill. I've actually never had him in any league before. So
Surprised you haven't traded for him.
Well, you know me, and you know how much
you probably asked for him. You probably asked for him.
You know how much I love a trade. Unfortunately, I still haven't been able to nab him from any of the other teams in our main leagues. But Tyreek was definitely going to be my number 1 wide receiver off the board. The most consistent wide receiver in fantasy, I think, over the last 6 years, with all 6 top 5 finishes, if not top 3 most years. So, yeah, McCaffrey or Tyreek Hill for me at 2, depending on what pick 1 did.
Yeah, I mean, based on last year, Hill, 1,800, 1,900 yards.
1,800 or so, yep.
So, very valuable pick. I can see that at number 2. Probably not the consensus, what I've seen on draft boards. Consensus is probably CeeDee Lamb at number 2, but Tyreek Hill would still be a solid number 2, for sure.
I don't think you can ignore him. He's got that burn ability every single week. And even if you're down, say, 15, 20 points, he can turn that scoring deficit like that in one play.
Yep.
It's just, he's too valuable. He's too valuable in that respect.
Yep. And they have Waddle there. They've also got Beckham, but I think he's got an injury cloud around him. So, but even when he does come back, like how much is he going to, steal that target share with Hill there? He's the main guy.
Waddle and Hill are the.
Yeah. Okay, so it's my pick. So I'm at pick 5. So this is probably the deepest wide receiver group I've seen go in the first round, actually, in the last few years, right? Like it's very heavily geared towards running back in years past. And it's probably reflective of how the league is at the moment. They're pass first at the moment, and I think that's where the value is. Even if you didn't go wide receiver in the first round, you could find a solid wide receiver 1, rounds 2, 3, 4 even, if you wanted to. But this pick here, I'd go Bijan Robinson. And Bijan Robinson, now he was a rookie last year, just under 1,000 yards. He got a lot of production last year, but there was also a running back committee there at Atlanta as well. I don't think he'll have that this year. I think he'll be the workhorse back. He'll also have Kirk Cousins at the helm as well, so that might help the running game as well, because he is a solid passer. He's actually a solid fantasy quarterback if you wanted to talk about Kirk Cousins. You told me a stat before, right? Kirk Cousins.
He hasn't finished lower than QB 11 in the last 7 years, with the highest rating of QB 7, I think, in the year before the injury, so 2022.
Yeah. So I think Bijan Robinson being there, I think he'll be a workhorse back. I think he'll be like what Barkley was at the Giants in his first 2 years there. First 3 years, actually, before all the injuries came along. So for me, it's running back. And personally, I've always gone running back in the first round. I've gone wide receiver once, I reckon, in the last few years. So running back, I'll lean on the touches that he'll get, the time that he'll spend on the field, and just the production he'll probably produce throughout the year without having that running back committee in Atlanta.
We should probably say that we are talking about a 10-man league, half PPR, and Robinson will eat up the catches this year from Kirk Cousins as well. He will easily have between 50 and 60 catches this year. I have no doubt about that.
Yen, what about you? Pick 10.
Well, traditionally, my first couple of picks are usually running back. Now, that didn't happen on the weekend. Unfortunately, I picked 10. Justin Jefferson fell to me. And when the draft was happening for the first round, I was actually praying for him to be taken. Because if he went to pick 10, it just made things all the more difficult. And how can you leave Justin Jefferson on the board for someone to take him in the second round? It just makes no sense. So in our draft, I actually ended up taking Justin Jefferson first, and then I went running back second. And then I topped up with running back in the later rounds. However, if I had my time and Justin Jefferson wasn't there, I would have gone running back. I probably would have taken Jahmyr Gibbs first. Again, similar to Bijan Robinson. He had an awesome second half of the season. He's an explosive running back where he can just break the gap and then he's hitting it for a 50-yard touchdown. And he's also a really good pass catcher. So he probably would have been my first pick. And regardless of where I would have been in the second round, I would have tried to get Kyren Williams. Now, I know a lot of people are wary about him because now he's taking punt returns and so forth. But realistically, it's just more opportunity for him to touch the ball. And with the new rule as well, you'll take an easy catch and you'll run it, 10, 20, 30 yards? And that's, 3 extra points just right there. And McVay said he's still going to feed Kyren Williams. So I don't understand why people are freaking out about him. So they would have been my first 2 picks if I had taken pick 10 and then everything fell in the correct draft order and so forth. But it wasn't meant to be. But I would have gone running back.
And what did you go, actually? So you went Jetters and then Kyren Williams, right?
Kyren Williams in the second round, yeah.
Yeah. I should also note that at pick 5, that Ja'Marr Chase was sitting there. And I did think about it. Also, the contract situation was probably in the back of my mind too. So whether he was going to be fit before week 1. Even if he does get the contract, I'm not too sure whether he would be factored into the first game in terms it's Ja'Marr Chase, right? So there was a bit of confusion there if he was going to be available. So I think Bijan Robinson would have been the safer pick. Yeah.
To be honest with you, in the first round, probably the 2 safest picks who haven't really had much of off-field conjecture and so forth are probably Tyreek Hill and Amon-Ra St. Brown. They're probably the 2 safest picks in the top 10. Because even now with Breece Hall is also an awesome pick, and he would have been he was one of my top 2 picks if I had in the top 5. So I would have gone Bijan or Breece. But you hear all these reports about the New York Jets and how they're going and Aaron Rodgers having all this power and not rocking up to training camp and all this stuff. Yeah. It does make you a little bit wary about Breece Hall and the team cohesion at the New York Jets. And let's not forget, they still have Hackett there as their offensive coordinator. So, again, out of the top 10, the 2 probably safest picks are probably Amon-Ra and Tyreek Hill, if you think about it.
I think their floors are pretty safe. You know what you're going to get from them every week, plus their upside. So, yeah, you probably hit the nail on the head with that one for sure. Yep. So if it's a snake draft, it's back to pick 5. Who would you have taken in the second round, Freddie?
Yeah, well, it's not who I'd have taken. It's who I took, actually, in the second round. I'm neither high or low on him, but he was there at in the second round, and that was Garrett Wilson, who I took, which I was happy with the pick, but I think I was more so leaning towards Aaron Rodgers' availability and how healthy he was going to be. Now, there's Aaron Rodgers, and I thought if he's going to be there, then I would trust Garrett Wilson's talent. I would trust Garrett Wilson's talent to actually get us some good fantasy production throughout the year, but it'll also be dependent on Aaron Rodgers' availability. So if he comes back nice and healthy and he does get that target share, I'm not too sure who else is available at the New York Jets outside of Garrett Wilson.
It's Mike Williams, who will probably play 4 or 5 games if he's lucky, until he's injured. I mean, I hope he plays all year, but we just know his history isn't great. And then I think they have a rookie named Corley from memory.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's the number 3, but it's pretty slim after.
Okay, so his target share is going to be, he'll get a lot of targets throughout the year. If it's Mike Williams is known. Is this Mike Williams from the Chargers?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's known just to be that 50-50 ball catcher, right? He's not really someone that you would throw intermediate passes to. So I think Garrett Wilson's probably the more refined route runner. I think he's the more refined wide receiver. So, yeah, for me, it's just dependent on Aaron Rodgers being there and being Aaron Rodgers of old, which I'm hoping.
Well, we'll see. We'll see if he stays fit.
Aaron Rodgers is, when he's had a number 1 wide receiver, they usually finish in the top 8 in terms of wide receivers. So pretty good stead. So you're not afraid of Randall Cobb or Alan Lazard if they're still there?
Oh, jeez.
Are they even still there?
Yeah. It's like a goal.
Surely they didn't make the team. Alan Lazard, I think, was on the chopping block early from all reports, but who knows?
Yeah, those names, I'd probably see them on Gold FM. That's, yeah. Wasn't expecting Alan Lazard and Randall Cobb on my bingo card for today's podcast, that's for sure.
Lazard is still there.
Alan Lazard is still at the Jets. Okay.
He made the 53.
He did.
Wow.
Okay. Awesome. All right. So that means you'll pick 2, which you're next. Or second last pick of the segment.
Pick 2, yep. Again, depending on if I went McCaffrey, the running back, or Tyreek Hill at wide receiver. I do also like to have the double running back. In this instance, given that I said we'll go with if I did go with Tyreek Hill, I would have gone around this range, probably Isiah Pacheco of the Chiefs. Had an awesome season last year. Finished like an absolute steam train. And your best mate, Jerick McKinnon, isn't there anymore, Jens. So I can't see Isiah Pacheco not becoming the 3-down workhorse and actually getting all of the goal line, unless Clyde Edwards-Helaire comes in to pinch 1 or 2 here and there. But I probably would have gone someone like Isiah Pacheco. I think the Chiefs are going to be the team to beat again in the AFC. So Pacheco definitely was on my radar.
Hot take. Cold take.
And if I went McCaffrey, I would have been happy to go double running back. But for a bit of difference, if I went double wide receiver around that range, I think it would have been someone like Mike Evans, who I've never had before. Now, people have been wary of Evans. I don't know why. He hasn't had anything less than 1,000 yards a season in his whole career. I've never had him, and I probably would have been lured to him as the double wide receiver strategy. But preferably Pacheco around that spot. I just think the Chiefs are going to be too good again, so he'll lead up the touches and the targets.
I think with Evans, though, I've had Evans a couple of times in the past, and it's not like he hasn't produced. I've always used Evans as trade bait if I wanted just a bit of depth at running back. So it's not like he doesn't produce. I feel like he's a solid fantasy producer. He's just not your flashy fantasy wide receiver that you would get in the first, 2-3 rounds, right? So I got Cooper Kupp a few years ago, which, he was over 2,000 yards that season, actually won me the championship along with Josh Allen. So
yeah, don't remind me.
But Mike Evans, yeah, he's solid. He'll get you 1,000 yards, get you 1,200 yards. He'll get you 20 points a game. Yeah, if you're using as your wide receiver one, in my opinion, you're probably at the bottom of the barrel there in terms of wide receiver one. You probably took your wide receiver one a bit late if Mike Evans is your number one.
Yeah, there's that, but he also, like you said, he's going to give you a pretty safe floor every week. Like between 15 and 20 points is almost guaranteed, I would have thought, with Mike Evans. He very rarely has a stinker of a game. So, yeah, it is late to have your wide receiver one, but having said that, you could do worse.
Okay. So, any thoughts on that? Yeah?
No. You wouldn't consider James Cook, Debo, or Achane around that point?
Well, speaking of Achane, in our actual draft, we know the debacle that happened when I went to select him, unfortunately, in the third round. And the system or the draft client decided to freeze on me as I was selecting Achane and auto-drafted Drake London. Achane was on my to-do list and to-pick list, but obviously that didn't happen and fell to yourself, Yen, soon after my pick. But
he's not salty about it at
all.
I'm
not salty at all anymore. I will admit I did zero research on Drake London, and I was actually quite surprised when I did to see that he had 69 catches for 900 yards. Only 2 touchdowns, but I mean, we're talking about with 2 very average quarterbacks last year. They've got a massive, massive upgrade at quarterback this year with Kirk Cousins. A top 5 offensive line. He, along with Pitts and Bijan, are the big 3 there. And we know that Kirk Cousins can service 3 big names, as he did in Minnesota with Jefferson, Hawkinson, and Dalvin Cook when he was there. So I have no doubt that Drake London will actually become a good pick for me. I'm not saying he'll be top 10, but he'll definitely be, I think, top 15. And hey, what was meant to be, is meant to be. So we'll see what happens with London.
Yeah, you mentioned a good point with Kyle Pitts. I'm probably going left field here, but what do you think about Kyle Pitts? Do you think he's going to vulture many touches or many targets off Drake London this season?
Well, he was meant to have one of the best draft grades and profiles coming out of college, and it hasn't worked out so far for him. You can blame Arthur Smith for how he's used him and so forth.
He's the defensive coach, right, though? Arthur Smith?
No, he's an offensive coach.
Oh, is he?
Okay. Yeah, he was an offensive coordinator.
He's the coach now at the Steelers, but unfortunately, and he did the same thing with Bijan last year too. Everyone thought Bijan was going to break out and have this massive year, and he just didn't. His play calling was putrid. He continued to use Tyler Algier and definitely underutilized Kyle Pitts. Like, I was listening to another podcast over the weekend before our draft, and Drake London had something like 110 to 100 or 120 targets. The next highest target share was like 40 targets for the year. Like, that's unheard of.
Was it for Cordarrelle Patterson?
I don't know who it was, to be honest, but that is a huge discrepancy, and it probably it points out how bad his play calling was. So I think now, with him moved on, Kyle Pitts and Drake London will be the 2 biggest beneficiaries of better play calling. Zach Robinson, who's from the Rams tree, the McVay tree, I'm pretty sure. And, of course, the massive upgrade at QB that we keep talking about, Kirk Cousins.
Cool. So that's your third pick?
That was my third pick, yep.
So that leaves it to me then. So in the third round, I got an absolute steal in the third round. People just kept bypassing him, but I got Puka Nacua in the third round, which now my wide receiver core is Garrett Wilson 1 and Puka Nacua. So I actually passed on Puka Nacua in the second round. Matter of fact, he probably should have been my second pick based on his fantasy production, or just his production in general. So I think he eclipsed Jahmyr Chase as the best rookie wide receiver in terms of yardage. So 1,486 yards. So And then just seeing how many targets he got, over 200 targets or something like that. So he did have a very solid season last year, and to pick him up in the third round, I was quite happy with that. So to the dismay of my my co-host over there. So Puka Nacua at 3, lock it in. Yen?
It's also good that you got one of your cousins on your team too.
Oh, we're going there. Episode 1, we're going there.
Yes. That's how we are, guys. That's how we are, and everyone listening out there, that is exactly what to expect.
All right, no worries. I'll just I'll just see if there was any Greek players drafted.
No, only on the defensive end. We got Kalafdis at Kansas City Chiefs. He's all right.
Yeah, you can't draft him. It's all right.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
All right, Yen, you?
All right, so if I went running back, I probably would have taken another running back as well. So, again, he fell to the end of the third round, which is like around pick 30 for us because we were 10-man. So I picked Devon Achane. Again, I know the worries because of Raheem Mostert, because he's still there at the Miami Dolphins and so forth. But there was also worry and conjecture about Breece Hall last year as well, because Dalvin Cook was there and everything. And eventually the younger running back took over the game, and he didn't really take him to the promised land. But if you had Breece Hall towards the end of the year, he was getting some monster scores. And if you see what Devon Achane did last year, other than that little period where he was getting banged up and so forth, he was a monster. His first couple of games were huge, and then he finished strong as well. Like, I had him in one of my leagues, and he took me to finals. He was scoring 20 to 25 points a game. So you can say Raheem Mostert's there, and he'll get the goal line work and so forth. But Devon Achane is so explosive. Like, I don't think we've seen such an explosive running back play. You can talk about his size and so forth, but no one says that about Kenneth Walker, Alvin Kamara, who's like 178 and so forth, but people are worried about Devon Achane, who's 175. So we're talking about, what, 3 to 5 centimeters difference? And if you're talking about arguably the 2-3 best running backs are about 180 centimeters, I don't understand how 5 centimeters is such a difference for people to be so worried about Devon Achane. And Raheem Mostert is 32. He had his best season of his career at the age of 32. And let's not forget, he used to be a broken down player as well. And Devon Achane last year came in with injuries. He had injuries in the preseason. He started late around round 4, whatever it was, or round 3. And then he just went bang and then got broken down again. He's had a full preseason this year. And they're going to use him in a lot of more screen plays and so forth. So if he's going to get a screen pass, he can easily take it to the house. So I'm not sure why people are worried about Devon Achane.
Glad you brought that up, because that's going to be a massive part of his game. And if you do, or anyone out there who has drafted him already, they are going to split him out. They are going to put him in different scenarios to use that explosiveness that he has. So again, I am filthy that pick didn't work out for me. I would have loved him for that, even if it did mean losing some goal line to Mostert, or, him potentially Mostert sharking 5 or 6 touchdowns away from him. He is going to be used in different ways, similar to that of Kyren Williams in the punt return game and kick return game. So there's still going to be opportunities to be on the field for him to use that speed.
Absolutely. And if you look at the preseason as well, that's how they're lining him up as well. They're trying to split him out wide so he can get into open space and use his speed. So, yeah. Again, I'm not sure why people are too worried. And like I said, Raheem Mostert had his best year at 32. Do you really think he's going to replicate the same production, getting 21 TDs total at the age of 33? I don't see it happening.
There'll definitely be regression, hence why later on in that draft I took Mostert as my RB2, just because I know that McDaniel will use both of them, and whether or not it's at the goal line or midfield, they're still both going to be used in a high-powered offense. So they're both bound to score fairly consistently, I would say. It's just a matter of who's going to be the boom in any given week, really.
All right. Awesome. That's week 1 of 3-Man Coverage Podcast. Thank you for joining us. We will have all our Twitter information and Instagram in the coming days, so stay tuned for that. But we look forward to seeing you for week 2. That's us. See ya.